Alright, to do example 1, evaluate a series within the terms 1, 7, 13, 9, 25 for the first 13 terms. When it says evaluate a series, all that's asking you to do is find the sum of the series. So what this means is, please write this down, find the sum. Whenever you read that, it says find the sum of the series. So that should clue you that we need to A, determine what, what is it, arithmetic or geometric, and that tells us what formula to use, and then we have to figure out what pieces of that formula we have to figure out in order to input that. And so I have broken this up into steps. Please write this exactly as you see it, and I need to see your steps laid out like this as you practice these problems. But to find the sum, the first step is to determine, is it arithmetic or geometric? And you do that by the difference, or the ratio. And so, if it's arithmetic, 7 minus 1 equals 6, comma, 13 minus 7 equals 6. So since it's subtraction, it has a common difference. So this is arithmetic. Arithmetic is not how you say it, it's arithmetic. Alright, so I did step 1, it's arithmetic. Meaning, step 2, I know what formula I need to use. The formula S of n equals n times a sub 1 plus a sub n all over 2. From here, if you can do step 1 and step 2, great. Now, this is where some new learning technically will come into play. I need to figure out what n is, what a sub 1 is, what a sub n is, in order to fill in that information to find the sum of this specific sequence. And so my third step is going to be beginning that process. I know I didn't leave you a lot of room, so please just use the room you can. You can write it on a separate sheet of paper if necessary. If you need to pause it to get a separate sheet of paper. But the third step then is I need to find out first what n is, and that will help me to find out what a sub n is. So I need to find n, and let me backtrack. I'm gonna title this step explicit formula. Explicit formula. This is just for note-taking benefit, but the third step is explicit formula, so please write that. With the explicit formula, that's going to help me find n and a sub n. So n equals, n is always going to be the, how many terms they say. In this case, they give us that for the first 13 terms. Sometimes they won't say for the first 13 terms, sometimes they'll just say evaluate a series, and you'll have to count the terms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But in this case, it specifies that it wants the first 13 terms. So that tells me that n is going to be 13. And so if n is 13, I'm switching from red to blue, that's fun. If n is 13, then I need to use the explicit formula of an arithmetic sequence. So this calls upon prior knowledge. A sub 13 equals, my original formula is a sub n equals a sub 1. So a sub 1 in this case, the first term in this sequence is 1. First term here is 1. So I'm going to put that a sub 13 equals 1 plus the difference, and we found the difference to be 6 up here. D equals 6. So plus the difference of 6 times n minus 1. That is step 3. That's going to help me find a sub n. So moving on to step 3, I found my explicit formula. You can square it if you want. That's very important. Step 4 then is find a sub n. And this whole process, if you remember, based off of this formula right here, I'll square it in green. This formula, S of n, I've needed to identify n, which I did right here, I needed to identify a sub 1, which is given to me in the sequence, and now I need to identify a sub n. In order to identify a sub n, this step, I need to evaluate n, right here, my n of 13, into my explicit formula. And I'm sorry, that's supposed to say a sub n. We're not quite there yet. So, if I want a sub 13, I need to find a sub 13. So I'm going to write a sub 13 equals 1 plus 6 times, instead of n, I'm going to put 13. So we've done this before. 13 minus 1. And that math, 1 plus 6 times is 73. So my 13th term is 73. And technically, this is a sub n for my formula's purposes. So now I have found all the pieces that I need. I know it's a lot for one problem, but you're more than capable of doing it. I have found n, I have found a sub 1, and I have found a sub n. So the final step, the fifth step, and I need to see this laid out like this, is just to input info into formula. So in order to do that, I'm going to extend the page here. In order to do that, I'm going to take I'm going to write s of 13 because I'm trying to find the sum of the first 13 numbers. So s of 13 equals my n, which I identified over here as 13, times my a sub 1, which I identified here. That's a sub 1. I got that from the first term in the sequence. 1, and then my a sub n I identified here. So 1 plus a sub n, which is 73, all over 2. And if I do that math, now to enter it into the calculator, this is very important. I'm going to just enter in this part first. So s of 13 equals 13 times 1 plus 73 is 962, but I still have that divided by 2. And now I can go ahead and divide 962 divided by 2, so s of 13 equals 481. And I am done. That is the sum. Now, please break it up like this. Do this part first in the calculator. Get that math and then rewrite it like this down here, and then divide it by 2. Just so that there isn't any errors that are made on the calculator. And that is how you find the sum of a sequence if given the terms.